Hey everyone, it's Stephanie, and you are tuned into the review of Married at First Sight, Season 8, Episode 9. So, this week was about getting to know each other on a deeper level in the way of talking about a very special event or traumatic event, or introducing your spouse to someone who is special in your life or significant, someone from your childhood, that of the sort. So we got deep on this episode. So let's kick it off with the first couple. I'm just going to start with Luke and Kate because I don't really believe in their their relationship. So I'm just going to kind of skirt over that. We see, Luke and Kate go to where Luke is from. I think it was Jersey. We watch them kind of hang out there. I don't know. A part of me feels bad for Kate, but then another part of me wants to shake her. And I really wish, we can see a one-on-one with her talking about maybe past relationships and where she really thinks this relationship is based on what she's seeing and why she's willing to accept it. Because somewhere along the episode, she said something like, this is turning into the marriage that I wanted. And I'm like, how? This is not. I think when she was at his parents' house, she said that. And I can't, for the life of me, based on what we have seen, and I'm sure there's more we haven't, how she could even say that. And so then it started making me think, well, where is this stemming from? Where is this coming from where you have found a way to make this acceptable, to where this is something that is now favorable for you? So we already know Luke is Luke. So we beat him down. I think he's lying. I think he's just trying to save face, and he might just be enjoying the experience because it is what it is. But I don't think he wants to be with her and is really doing what this experiment wants him to do, which is really find a mate and see if they can stick it out. I don't get that vibe from him. I get that he's gonna coast along and try to make this work as long as the 6 or 8 weeks are, and then he's just gonna go ahead because he really has never been checked in enough to even be checked out. We see them go to his parents' house, and the family's very warm and inviting, and they're having a good time. But the conversation that his mother has with her is very telling of where this relationship will go, because we see that first of all, the mom has never really been a support in terms of this experiment. She said initially when we first met her at the wedding that she thought this experiment made a mockery of marriage, and she says that again this episode. So she's not in favor of it. She's just supporting her son. We know her and her son are very close. Most of us probably talk to our parents or if not dad, then mom. So you can tell based on her questions, asking Kate, what's the best case scenario, or at minimum, what would you want from this experiment? Out of all 8 seasons, I've never seen a parent ask a spouse that question. So it's very telling that she doesn't think it's going to work out. And I feel like if Luke maybe told her differently, then she might get on board. But I feel like Luke is telling her that he's not really interested and he's not committed beyond, or he's not happy with maybe who she is, not necessarily her as a person, but who she is in terms of what he wanted. So mom already knows. The moment she asked that question, I was like, girl, grab your purse and go. Grab an Uber. You need to get out of there. It's time. Mom either makes or breaks in terms of what information she gives you. And if she's close to her son, chances are he's talking to her. And so, that's Luke or Kate. It's going nowhere. I'm usually an optimist for love, but we see that this is more toxic than anything, and I think we are delaying the inevitable, or they are. And so we'll see. Luke and Kate, I mean, if it just wasn't so ugly at the beginning, I could tolerate watching them and being like, they don't have chemistry, but they seem like good people. But it wasn't, so that is Luke and Kate. So next we will go to Stephanie and AJ. Stephanie and AJ continue to kind of have a good time. I'm sticking to my guns with it in terms of thinking that they have a beautiful friendship, but I don't, I think they enjoy each other. So maybe they might make that work. I have not gotten the couples chemistry from them, but maybe they will make that work. Maybe it could blossom into something. I don't know. But they continue to enjoy each other. AJ talks about a very traumatic experience that he had with a motorcycle accident that really gave him his zest for life. So sometimes everybody, well, a lot of times, everybody's like, AJ's too much, he talks too much, he's too energetic, it's annoying. And so we got to see maybe why he's doing that. And he explained, listen, I thought I was going to die. Like, I expected to die, and that's why I take risks. That's why I have such a zeal for life, and I make no apologies about that. So when somebody has that near-death experience, they really don't care what people have to think or what people have to say. And so we're watching AJ in this loud, boisterous personality, and that might come from just being excited to be here, and then he may not know how to tone it down, because he also says that he knows he needs to work on that as well. So it was good to watch him share that with her, because obviously that's a very serious experience, and he got a little emotional talking about it. So it's still very near and dear. They went to Stephanie's parents' house, and AJ fits right in, but he has that personality where, he's not somebody that you bring along that's going to be quiet or uncomfortable. He kind of jumps in, he tends to be the life of the party. Her parents really like him. Her parents kind of are happy that they get along so well, because it's good for them to know that she's with someone that makes her laugh and they genuinely enjoy each other. I believe Stephanie's traumatic event was kind of losing her job after the crash, and a lot of people experience that, and kind of one day not doing what you know and not having what you work so hard for. I have friends who's experienced that, so that's definitely traumatic, especially when you're fresh out of school at that time, and you think you have this life path, and then everything kind of crumbles. So she shared that with him, and they kind of talked about their experiences. So I think they had a pretty good experience with talking about things beyond the surface and interacting with family. So that is Stephanie and AJ. Next we have Will and Jasmine. Will and Jasmine, I felt like they had a solid episode as well. We've been watching Will and Jasmine kind of go back and forth with a lot of things. We've had a lot of opinions, but this episode, they pretty much interacted very well. Will went to his old recreation center that he ties into a lot of good times, a lot of things he's learned, a lot of skills he's learned, some of the closest people to him. So he brought his best friend and Jasmine to the recreation park, and they kind of talked about their memories and stuff like that. Jasmine slid down the slide, and so they were having a good time, and Will speaks so fondly of that place, so it's really important to him, and he just talks about how many things he really got out of that and how that experience shaped him. And it was interesting to see Jasmine's response, because she just comes from such a different background. And so I think that she was able to kind of appreciate that experience with him, even though it was so far from what she experienced. On the flip side, Jasmine took Will to her aunt and uncle's house. So the uncle and aunt, they're so sweet. They're so welcoming. They invite them over for dinner. They're talking about how Jasmine practically was there just as much as she was at home. And, so Jasmine brings up, hey, give us some really good marriage advice. And so the aunt says, listen to Will, because he is the head of your household. So Jasmine is very funny, okay? Because she'll say certain things, but she's not really committed. She'll say she wants to be a traditional wife, but she's very modern in her responses. She will say, I want to do what a traditional wife does. But then when the aunt says, listen to him because he's the head of the household, then she says, no, he needs to listen to me. She's very much a modern woman who she values old school setup, but I don't know if she really wants that old school setup, because on the flip side, there's a responsibility to that. So it's not just being the one who doesn't have to pay the bills, but now you have to take more responsibility of those children. Now you have to take more responsibility of the whole household. And that in itself, I think taking care of the household and kids 100% is harder than work, because at least you get to leave work. So, there's a responsibility to that. And if you're really going to be traditional in the sense of you listen to your husband or whatever, then you have to take everything that comes with that. So she's not about that, and that's perfectly fine. I 100% get that. But then you have to take ownership that then you don't, he's not the 100% breadwinner, and you have to figure out how that works. So she mildly throws him under the bus, and because she asked her aunt, well, what does that mean? Listen to him, he's the head of the household. And the aunt says, well, he'll be paying most of the bills. And she throws him under the bus and says, hey, we don't agree on that. And so I didn't think that that was the best thing, because I feel like even when you want to throw your spouse under the bus, you shouldn't, especially with very important things like that. Like funny stuff doesn't matter, but important things that you guys are really still discussing, you don't, because it's already like a point of contention, and putting people on your side, it doesn't make it any better. But luckily, with the help of, I don't know, the production team, or maybe the conversation just went as smoothly as possible, her aunt kind of circumvents going into that argument and basically says, you guys need to figure out what works for you, and says that communication is basically their best friend, and that is how they will remain married, and whatever you put into your marriage, you'll get out. And they have been married for 58 years. So it was really nice to see that, get that solid advice. Sometimes people ask questions about marriage and they want this elaborate answer of what makes it work. And when you talk to couples, but really couples who have years and years of experience together, they always give you the real solid stuff. And it's basic. It's respect, it's communication, it's discipline, it's consistency, it's really listening to each other. It's not like some of the outlandish things that we think, makes it work, or some of the grandiose actions, all that stuff is icing, but like the communication, the respect, that stuff is cake. So we want more cake than icing. So that is Will and Jasmine. Last but not least, Keith and Kristine. I should have started with them, but Keith and Kristine, they have a great episode as well. There's a lot of stuff to unpack here. So Keith and Kristine kind of discuss their history, and we find out that Keith's father has not really been in the picture, and he doesn't go too much into it, and you can tell that Keith is still affected. I mean, we saw that, fast forward, his father didn't show up, but I'll get to that. He's still affected by the lack of that relationship. And so we all know he was raised by his mom, his grandmother, his aunt, and his father was not really around. So he discusses that a little bit, but he doesn't really go into too much detail. Kristine talks about how she was in a previous relationship where she was engaged, actually. He was the breadwinner. And so he basically controlled her. And she got emotional talking about that. And you could see part of that emotion was frustration, while she was acknowledging that this relationship is similar in some ways. And that's exactly what she didn't want. So you can tell that she appreciates, certain values, but she also is a very modern woman. And with her being the breadwinner, she says, listen, I can't do everything. Like, you can't expect me to cook 3 meals a day, and you can't expect me to be the breadwinner, and now you're complaining. So Keith has the audacity to complain about cleaning, but he wants 3 meals a day from her, and she also, is the breadwinner. So here's where I think Keith struggles. I don't even think that Keith really struggles with the fact that he's cleaning a lot and he needs help. I think because he's not used to doing anything, because he has lived with, his mom and most recently his grandmother, I feel like anything is too much for him, because you're not cleaning every day all day long. So what is it that you're doing that is so stressful for you that you now need to have your wife pitch in on top of what she's already doing, but you're not taking any initiative? And so she's basically sharing, listen, this isn't the 50s. Like, I don't want to be this type of woman. I don't mind doing these things, but I need some help. And he's not hearing her, and he's very immature. So they get into this, I wouldn't say it was an argument. It was just kind of like a disagreement, because they really did not come to a head about it. They end up having a session with Dr. Jessica, which I felt like went all the way wrong, because I did not agree with what her viewpoint of that was. So Dr. Jessica basically talks to them and basically says, Keith, he grew up and he had these women because they basically said we got into an argument about food recently because he wants me to cook 3 meals a day and so on and so forth. So Dr. Jessica says, I understand that food is it's tied to a memory of feeling safe and feeling loved, and your father wasn't in the picture, and so grandma took care of you and made sure you were fed, and all this beautiful story. And it really was such a one-sided perspective. Keith even said, he gave this story of how his dad was like drinking in the car and he was 13 and he was driving and he called his grandfather for directions and he didn't know where to go. Okay. I'm not being a jerk, okay? Because there's an aspect of that is a little traumatizing when you're dealing with a parent who has an abuse issue, whatnot. But the experience that Dr. Jessica explained, I don't think was fitting based on that story about him being like a parentified child. That usually happens when you're with a parent who is, in and out of jail, or they might be sick, or, someone who, is a substance abuser. However, because we heard, his father drank a lot, but we also heard his father was not in the picture a lot. So we didn't really hear that Keith grew up taking care of his father. Yes, there may have been instances where he acted more like the parent, but based on that story, it didn't give me the whole parentified child. And the story was just, I don't know, it didn't click for me. I felt like it was an excuse. I felt like it was to validate why. Like, we're in an age where we can really make progress and recognize why some things are the way they are. In being able to recognize why things the way they are, we can, take the initiative to do better. So if your dad was abusive, you don't get to be abusive and say, my dad was abusive. You get to say, my father did things, or my father was absent, and so I want to do better. My husband grew up in a single parent home. He knows how to do a lot. He's not saying my dad wasn't there, so I can't do X, Y, Z. So the fact that we can recognize where some of our issues stem from should empower us to be able to work through those issues. So I felt like that was so one-sided, because then the violin started playing, and then Kristin was like, I understand, he's loved through food. And I hate that for her, because I feel like she wasn't heard. She's saying, I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. He needs to step up. I do X, Y, Z, and he does a little bit of this, and it's too much for him. No, that's not how it should have gone. I get it. I get that you love through food. So here, recognize that he loves through food, and maybe that'll give you a little more patience when he's bothering you about it, because it could get annoying. I get it. So we'll see that. We'll have more patience. However, you need to step it up, Keith. You need to grow up. You're not living with mommy and grandma and auntie anymore. It doesn't matter what your dad did or didn't do, because you are now the grown man. And in recognizing that you have some limitations, it is now your responsibility to step up. You can't walk around like the head of the household if you don't give, a woman a reason to follow you. She's not going to trust you, and you're not going to have her respect based on the fact that you're a man. So it was frustrating for me to feel like she wasn't heard, and she just kind of had to say, okay, I get it, and now I'll continue to do what I'm telling you is overwhelming me on top of all the things that I have to do. So that's my synopsis of that. I mean, I just felt like she wasn't heard, and I felt like his behavior and lack of assistance in the household was justified because of whatever. And at the end of the day, who cares? Because we can all say, well, my mom or my dad, and when I grew up, this was like that. But what kind of life do we want now? What kind of marriage do we want now? What kind of experience do we want now? So I didn't like how that went for her. But I hope that, because I think are a great couple, they have great potential. There's a lot of things going on, but I do believe that they have great potential. I really do hope that they are able to work through this stuff moving forward, continuing to communicate. And I hope that he steps it up so that she doesn't get overwhelmed and just wants to not be bothered, because right now he pretty much is winning. And she's already had to, kind of take some L's with maybe not necessarily what she signed up for in certain ways, but it can work if he's willing to compromise. And I think she's willing to compromise. She's already doing it. So that's it. As always, thank you for listening to my rant. Let me know what you guys thought. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, and I will see you next week. Everyone have a great weekend.